I want to just step through some of the news that's going on. And there's a lot out there regarding the events of what's taking place in Israel. I say Israel, most of it has been in the neighborhood. But let me kind of methodically go through this, and I don't want to take too much time, but you need to know this. The issue is, on Sunday, our Sunday time for us, the Israeli Air Force made some pretty remarkable airstrikes in Syria, on Syrian soil, against, listen carefully, against Iranian military installations in the land of Syria, okay? And those sorties, those flights, those missions, as has been the case, Israel has flown now thousands of sorties since this entire conflict got underway, and rarely, if ever, is Israeli aircraft being detected, and that happened once again. Israel made unchallenged attacks on these Iranian military sites, some of them, now we know, and I'll talk about this in a moment, that were facilities, Iranian facilities, covered up, decoyed, looking as other things. Some of those facilities looking like nothing, looking at as though they were hollowed out buildings with no activity. And what now we know from both Israeli Mossad and CIA and other intelligence agencies that they were none other than weapon enrichment, weapon development plants, which, remember you guys, according to the Iranian nuclear arms deal, none of that stuff was supposed to be happening. Israel was making up all this information, and nobody believed them. But let me just again mention this, that shortly after dark on Sunday, April 29th, there were multiple airstrikes in Syria in the Hama province. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which is based in Britain, but monitors Syria activity, was able to conclude that 26 individuals were killed, they reported. Most of them, if not all of them, were Iranians. The strikes hit munitions warehouses of the 47th Brigade military base in central Hama province that Iran has been operating as a proxy use area, destroying stockpiles of missiles and causing large explosions to the observatory, or that the observatory reported. The blast was so large that seismic monitoring earthquake equipment picked up a 2.6 earthquake from the bombing missions. And now we know that Israel had used, now Israel's not admitting this, but there's information that shows that what was used was a U.S.-built GBU-39B, which is the famous bunker-busting bomb that Boeing munitions developed. So far as we know, the United States and Russia has that type of bomb. It's extremely powerful. It detonates once it hits the ground, and then it goes deeper into the ground and it detonates again. And it's quite remarkable, but it's set off, or its impact created a 2.6 earthquake on the Richter scale in that part of the world. 3 U.S. officials told NBC News, this is great, listen to this carefully, that the strikes were carried out by Israeli F-15s, which is fantastic because Israeli F-15s are not stealth aircraft, but the aircraft were not seen entering the country, detected, seen, or detected leaving. They were completely stealth. And you know, people say, well, you know what, our radar wasn't working. That's why we missed it. Well, their radar has been supplied by Russia. Russia's got egg all over their face right now because this just keeps happening. Israel goes in with aircraft that's not to be stealth. Turns out they're stealth aircraft because you guys know that, we've mentioned it before, Israel has the capability of making their equipment that flies stealth. And so they have their way of doing that. And so some of the items that have been really mined out of this attack has been most remarkable and quite embarrassing to the world community that has been standing in defense of either Bashar Assad or Iran. And so the information now, maybe you saw this, But shortly after, Benjamin Netanyahu gave the most remarkable speech to the world. And I say to the world because he spoke from Jerusalem, but he delivered the message in an uncharacteristic manner in English because he was giving it to the world. It was so important. And the reason why is because, again, this is not unusual, but Iran, in fact, I heard today that there is executions being carried out in Iran and in Syria. Why? Because everything that was struck and hit was so specifically known to the Israelis that only somebody inside Iran could have let them know that. On top of the fact that Israel had performed a clandestine Mossad spy operation and extracted from at that time, a secret location known to nobody but a few Iranians, that their area had been breached. Now think about this in a Hollywood movie scene. So in the middle of the night, this happens, the alarms go off, and all they see, in fact, they pursued these thieves out of the country, almost catching them at times. But the Mossad agents got out of this sensitive area, back to Tel Aviv, to the command center, all in one night. And they were able to actually extract what they're now saying is information. In fact, Netanyahu reported that the information that they were able to gather exposes Iran's nuclear weapon program with incriminating documents, charts, presentations, blueprints, photos, videos, and names of the research personnel and more. Netanyahu showed in a spreadsheet to the world yellow cake production, centrifuge enrichment process taking place, warhead projects, simulation projects, test projects, the unlimited enrichment capabilities of Iran. Iran plans to have several 100,000 advanced centrifuges that they were embarking upon to bring about to completion. Proof, certified documented proof from these documents. Now they're exposing them to the nations of the world and their intelligence agencies that Iran continues to develop a ballistic missile program. All of this, people remembering that you and I gave them, I forget the dollar amount. We gave them 500 million? Billion. How much? 150 billion US dollars to the Iranians for their friendly development of nuclear power, which now the world knows as of the last 48 hours that Iran was and is about and all about creating nuclear weaponry that the previous administration gave the thumbs up to go for. So there's a lot of splaining to do, Ricky Ricardo would say. But you're watching right now the world view eat humble pie right now because they've been defending Iran, and some very, very remarkable things may happen very, very soon. Again, you can read, none of this that I'm reading you is secret. It's online. You can find out more about it at various news agencies. Want to run through very fast because we need to get into tonight very quickly some of the news clips that are out there. Israel seems to be preparing for war with Iran, U.S. officials say. And you can look up these articles later. Next slide. U.S. officials say Israel behind latest Syria strike, preparing for war with Iran. NBC News reports. Yeah, Israeli at UN. Iran has more than 80,000 fighters in Syria. Now, you can argue with with Israel, what they claim. Israel's learned over the years not to make any claims unless they can back it up. So this is pretty remarkable stuff. Missile strikes on Syria killed 26, mostly Iranian. We just talked about that a moment ago. I think this might be our last one coming up. Netanyahu's Iranian nuclear expose will not avert an Israeli-Iranian clash of arms. And that's where people are at right now, is what's going to happen anytime in the Middle East. Israel now, very, very wisely, strategically, has produced data justifying any actions that Israel takes from here on out. Do you understand that? Israel has revealed to the world that now they've got the green light of justification to deal with Iran. Here's the hook. Russia has an arms or war treaty agreement with Iran. Russia has vowed to protect Iran against any invaders or attackers. That's an actual legal agreement that they have. They've had it, by the way, for many years. Russia, that's how Russia guarantees its oil from Iran. You say, yeah, but Iran, that's Iran. Yes, I understand, but Iran now is in Syria. Syria now is a satellite of Iran. That's how Iran views it. But Russia doesn't view it that way. Russia views Iran and Syria, and for that matter, Lebanon, as a satellite of Russia. So tonight, later on, go home and read Ezekiel 38, because you are watching the hook being set, the Bible says, into the jaw of the leader of Rosh, Meshach, and Tubal, the land today that is occupied by Russia. Pretty remarkable stuff. Know Ezekiel 38. Read it slowly, read it carefully. This is an amazing time.